Peace, everyone. How you doing? Welcome to Israel Doctrine Google Hangout. I'm your host, Carl Labin, and you have now entered into the Hangout. And tonight's topic is Pan-Africanism, Christian roots and its counterintelligent branches. Now, this is going to be a pretty simple conversation. It's going to go a lot of different ways, seeing the simplicity will make it more general in different areas and stuff. But this is all to bring forth the conversation that is needed in our community today, people. We have a history, a vast history, and a lot of historical people. Two of the main characters that probably gonna hit the stage tonight is Booker T. Washington and Marcus Garvey. And Kwame, I can't say that last name, but and Puma or whatever, and different other, key Pan-African figures. You know, Pan-Africanism is very diverse. It has a lot of different facets to it, and seeing that we are in 2016, the flag and the colors RBG has taken on a new identity and things too. So the legacy of Pan-Africanism once again is vast, and we're going to go through as much of the history and individuals and information tonight as possible. We got a lot of brothers on the line, sisters on the line, but we're going to start off with my brother Sharp Spirit. He's going to start us off, then we're going to go to Nyame. I hate I be messing up that brother's name, but he knows no disrespect to him. I don't have that great tongue to deal with these names. Then we're gonna go to Pit Boss. Brother Chris supposed to be calling in. We got Brother Knowledge in here. I don't know if he's busy, how much he's gonna participate, but we just gonna have an open dialogue, ask questions, and keep this on the right track. So with that said, Sharp Spear, you in?
Yeah. You hear me?
Yes.
Yeah,
Go
there we
ahead.
go.
How you doing, Brother James?
Yeah, I invited Brother James to.
It's all good. The more the merrier. We gonna have a great conversation. There's a lot of people here with knowledge, so that's why I said me myself, I'm gonna take a back seat and try to make sure we all stay on the right track, topic, and subject matter. So with that said, Sharp Spear.
Make sure they mute their mic so we don't get no feedback or whatever.
Okay. Everybody,
All right.
you got the flow.
Okay. Well, since I got the floor, I'll open up and say that Pan-Africanism, as you know, some people know or people might not know, was birthed from America, that it was the gift that our ancestors gave us that struggled through slavery, that Pan-Africanism was embodied by two of our greatest leaders ever, Booker T. Washington and Marcus Garvey. The outline of their mission was Christianity. It was uplifting the black race wherever on the planet. It was incorporating these skills and these inventions that our ancestors created in America to be the light to the world, not just the African world, but to the world in general. That we were supposed to be masters of men, to be an example of righteousness and purity to the world. We were supposed to stay disciplined in our endeavors to be all that God wanted us to be on this earth. We pretty much can start, with Booker T. Washington at Tuskegee, and Tuskegee being the model that was supposed to be replicated all over the world, in America, in Africa, in Haiti, the various trades and the methods in which these trades was put into practical knowledge, was going to be our economic foundation, and we were supposed to survive not only in this world, but around the world.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that a lot of our problems today is not necessarily what some other group is doing to us, but what we're not doing. We're not being obedient to the ancestors. We're not thinking about the ancestors of America who, for example, made peanut butter, and now you got peanut butter all over the shelf in every grocery store in the world, but are the black people benefiting off of peanut butter? So if the answer is no, then that's one area where we have been disobedient to those who laid this foundation, to where now we got our people looking 3,000-4,000 years back in time, trying to find a solution to the problems of 2016. But all of the problems that can come in this world have already been remedied by our ancestors in America. And I think as we get on and deeper enough into the show, we'll be able to provide, names and activities in which these people did. And I think their example is clear cut on who's been perverting our destiny and our direction. And I give that to you, Carl.
I appreciate. Brother Nyame, you're up next.
Can you hear me?
Yes, loud and clear.
I just want to state that these brothers that started the movement, the movement started before there was the idea of Pan-Africanism. The movement is just basically identifying with your ethnic groups, that you guys came from a common place, that you share a common history, and that the struggle, you share a certain struggle with people that look like you, speak like you, and act like you. They were predominantly Christian, but the men that started Pan-Africanism were not trying to start a second Christian denomination or a Christian denomination, but a empowerment movement. And they used all the technologies and best practices of their time. And as we go along, we're going to see that the moral character and the ethics that they had, even though it was a Christian foundation, it went across lines of Muslim, some different traditions that were brought here from the African continent was also included into their practices. But Pan-Africanism is not just the people that started it. It has a long history up until today. And so that's what I'm going to bring. I'm going to bring the totality of Pan-Africanism, the origins and where it stands today. And that's going to be the point of view I'm coming from. So you're going to have men that started the movement, and then men who fought to keep it going, and their struggles, and where we are today. And that's I'm gonna leave it right there.
Okay, Pitt boss.
How you brothers doing this evening?
Peace, bro.
All right. Just to, establish a few things about this Pan-Africanism. This is a simple, if you want to say, 10-point plan of Marcus Garvey, who is well recognized for being an official of the Pan-African movement, and he has an objective list. First objective is to establish a universal confraternity among the race. Second, to promote the spirit of race and pride and love. Third is to reclaim the fallen of the race. Fourth is to administer to assist the needy. The fifth is to assist in civilizing the backward tribes of Africa and others around the diaspora. The sixth is to strengthen the imperialism of independent African states. The seventh is to establish a commissionary or agency in the principal countries of the world for the protection of all the black folks, irrespective of nationality. Eighth is to promote the conscious Christian worship among the native tribes of Africa, to establish a university, colleges, and secondary schools for further education and the culture of the boys and the girls of the race, and to conduct a worldwide commercial and industrial intercourse. These are the frameworks. This is what he instituted. This is what he learned from observation of Booker T, Washington, and what we're going to tend to get in tonight is what happened, how we get where we are.
Okay, brother James, you got the flow now.
Y'all need me to say something? I think y'all covered everything.
I mean, it's all good. You know the topic, right?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. What was the original question? I think I might have missed that. We just
It's just opening statements and stuff. Pan-Africanism, okay. Christian roots, and its counterintelligent branches.
Okay. So. Well, first of all, I want to thank you all for asking me to come on, Brother Nyame. Happy New Year to everybody. And I also want to, before I say anything else, I want to give honor to the newest ancestor, Dr. Frances Cress Welsing, as well. If anybody's on my page, I might have seen, it was on my, right before the week of my 19th birthday, she gave me a copy of the ISIS papers as a birthday present. So I want to give a special honor to her. In terms of Pan-Africanism, I guess one of my specialties in terms of history is studying movements of people and ethnicity and how that relates to social identity. So the thing that has to be understood, in my view, about African people today, particularly in the diaspora, no matter where you find yourself, is that we currently have formed our social identity based upon a shared historical experience, being that, of course, of the transatlantic slave trade. And let's not forget, the transatlantic slave trade did affect those on the continent as well as those who were taken from the continent. Okay, one of the issues that you have that arose that I hope to maybe discuss in a few minutes, I guess, is understanding that pre that experience, African people didn't necessarily identify as African people per se. You know, we knew that we had the same lineage, but if you live in a world or on a continent where just about everybody looks like you to varying degrees, you're not worrying about this concept of being one people as such. It's a regional, it's your bloodline, what gods you worship, etc. So understanding that, what has to be understood is, I mean, I know we gave honor to Booker T. Washington, to Marcus Garvey, and others a few minutes ago, but understanding that, we have to understand that we as a people in the modern era, and by modern I mean post the 1600s, we're in history at that point as a Pan-African people, or forming a Pan-African identity. Okay, understanding the fact that brothers, even though we may come from Haiti or Jamaica or the United States or whatever, we may crack jokes here and there about differences or learn different cultural mores and folkways or what have you. We still understand that we're all in the same struggle. We all were on the same boat literally, and we're in the same boat metaphorically and allegorically today. I think, to me, that's what Pan-Africanism really means. It's a part of our social identity as a people today, and that's why those who do not or who work against that, if you notice, even naturally in our community, they're ostracized within our community, because there's an underlying understanding that there is a struggle. When we say we're in the struggle, well, no one has to ever question what struggle are you talking about. You don't have to say it, because it's something that we all experience to varying degrees unfortunately, some of us think that we're benefiting from it, when in actuality we're all suffering. So, again, I hope to maybe get into that in a few minutes. But I appreciate y'all having me this evening.
Okay, we got brother Chris here too. Chris, since you didn't chimed in now, just make it kind of brief, and then we're gonna get into an in-depth conversation here.
Yeah, of course. Thank you for having me up here. I want to say peace and respect to everybody who's a part of this conversation and listening. I think everybody pretty much touched on a lot of things, so just gonna keep it rolling, get right to the show. Thanks, brother.
Okay, so now we're gonna get back to sci-fi, and we pretty much gonna keep the same arrangement that we already got. So, brother Shakespeare, could you bring us into the Christianizing of Pan-Africanism, like Booker T and Marcus, and take us into in depths of how this is based off a Christian foundation. I believe everybody agreed up on that, but if you could lay a little bit more of that, and then we start moving from there, because I think this dynamic is very important to the conversation, seeing that it is one of the key statements within the title.
Right. Well, like the brother earlier had said, you have these different tribes of Africa who came through the transatlantic slave trade and became one people up in here. And during our times of enslavement, we were tested and trying to figure out what does this all mean, So like for example, we have Harriet Tubman, somebody who when she was seeking out what was going on, and she prayed, earnestly for an answer, she got an answer. And the guy who she listened to was the one who told her to go free the slaves. And then you see she has a whole career where she's freeing slaves, and she's telling us who she got her guidance from. She's telling us that God says, make a right and not a left. Go to this stranger who you never knew before and knock on that door and tell them, God said, give me $20 to help these slaves escape. And this lady went on faith of what she said she heard in her mind, and everything was confirmed. So when we think of the Christian aspect of our struggle and why our people, and especially our heroes, accepted Christianity, it wasn't because something was forced on them. Like Edward Blyden says in his writings, slavery was by divine providence. So our people looked at this struggle in America, being enslaved. Some people was born a slave, died a slave. Never got an opportunity to see what we see right now in 2016. But we knew that it was by divine providence. So when you look at slavery, like I said, what was birthed, like during slavery, we would have what you would call proto-Pan-Africanism or proto-Black nationalism, where the ideas was formulated over a course of, many years and decades. But when it came time after emancipation to practice it, then that's where Booker T. Washington come in as the leader of leaders, who was given the task of laying out this new civilization. So in this civilization, the importance of Christianity was, according to the text of Christianity, was the power that we have in this new covenant. So Booker T. Washington, where he'd take the science of of the scriptures and apply it, and apply it in a scientific way, and just gave us that outlook, like, help me out, Carl.
Uh,
What was your actual question?
the actual question is just laying again the foundation of Booker T, Garvey, and even those that came before him, like you said, Harriet Tubman, Nat Turner. Uh, um, you have Walker. You have all these different individuals. Delaney. We even gonna deal with Prince Hall there a little bit tonight, I guess. Also,
Right.
I guess we could deal with that a little bit tonight, seeing how he was a preacher and how he even dealt with you know bringing
Yeah.
masonry into the key thing after the war and
Yeah.
everything,
Prince
and how
Hall.
Delaney and everybody, just the Christian
Yeah.
factor of it. We're gonna move on to other
Right.
people also, but if you could lay a little bit
Right.
more tracks.
Right. Okay. Well, like Booker T. Washington said, is that he's not waiting for the heaven of the future, and that if you imitate the life of Christ more on this earth, heaven comes there. So one of the things about Pan-Africanism was it was rooted in the kingdom of God. Wherever we were, that's where heaven was supposed to be.
So it was establishing the kingdom of God based upon the gospel message. Booker T and Garvey, you saying? That's what you saying?
Yeah. Yes. Let me read this quote from Booker T. He says, as a race, we are inclined, I fear, to make too much of the day of judgment. We have the idea that in some far-off period, there is going to be a great and final day of judgment, when every individual will be called up, and all his bad deeds will be read out before him, and all his good deeds made known. I believe every day is a day of judgment, that we reap our rewards daily, and that whenever we sin, we are punished by mental and physical anxiety, and by a weakened character that separates us from God. Every day is, I take it, a day of judgment. And as we learn God's laws and grow into his likeness, we shall find our reward in this world, in a life of usefulness and honor. To do this is to have found the kingdom of God, which is in the kingdom of character and righteousness and peace.
Okay. So now let's go to Nyame. It seems as if you agreed upon the foundation of Pan-Africanism was rooted in Christianity. I also know that at the end of the day, we all must agree. Hopefully, if you don't agree, you could even say it right now that our first learning tool was the Bible. That's what we read and got most of our intellect from, our problem solving from, and this is what these gentlemen use. So if you could go into that, in depth a little bit from your perspective of what that was all about.
I'd like
Yeah.
to tackle that too after Brother Nyame, if it's possible. I'm sorry.
I'm not going to take a lot of time. I'm just going to, I disagree that it was Christianity, that Pan-Africanism was based off of Christianity. I think Christians were motivated to start a movement that would not just liberate us, but to bring us to a better position on this planet. And I think that is innate in every strong-minded, healthy-minded man and woman. That's a desire that you have a better place on this planet, and that you build a better future for your children. I think that's just every human, no matter what they believe, it's in them. Now, the Bible plays an important role, because when culture was stripped from us, that's where we turn to build our culture. Because remember, even though a lot of us look alike, we came from vastly different tribes and different ethnicities on the continent. We spoke different language. So we found a commonality in our struggle and in the Bible. But I just want to give an example of my grandmother, and then I'm going to leave it there. My grandmother, by a lot of the people that say they're Christians today, wouldn't have called her a Christian, even though she would say she was a Christian. My grandmother was a Creole lady from Louisiana, northeast Louisiana, a lot of Geechee Gullah culture. You can tell it was voodoo and Christianity mixed in how she believed. She couldn't read a lick of the Bible, but the principles of family and how you take care of people, she had those principles, but she had some other stuff mixed in along there. And I think that's what we had back in those days also. It was a lot of our traditional culture mixed in with some principles that we learned in the Bible. But to me, that represents Pan-Africanism, not just a different form of Christianity, but Pan-Africanism is a collection of different beliefs and ethnicities working towards a better future. To me, that's the origins of it. And were the men Christians that started the foundations of the movement? Yes. But
okay, so you agree that that was the predominant cultural tool at its time, Christianity. Most people was Christians, and therefore these Christians use the principles and things of that nature of the Bible to come up with this Pan-African system. I just want.
Yeah, somewhat.
Okay, we're gonna go to Sci-Fi or Pit Boss next. Then we're gonna go to you, James. Then we're gonna go to Chris. So, Pit Boss, from your study point, your viewpoint, could you give us a little background on the Christian roots of Pan-Africanism?
Okay, well, one, you can start in the 1900s when we first have the first Pan-African conference takes place out in London. And you can look at the framework of the people. One, I can't agree that Pan-African, this isn't the moment that Pan-African is born. This is just the moment that this has to come together to be put into a framework so that it could be implemented. Because if the idea is not implemented, you can't make claim that it's in effect, like because it was on the idea of Africans leaving Africa, at the beginning of slavery is the beginning of Pan-Africanism. When Pan-Africanism is a collectiveness of black people coming together. This is why Pan-African can't possibly be put into effect while you're in slavery, because at this stage it's a matter of mastering yourselves and developing yourselves to become an economical powerhouse on the planet. So when you look at the framework of the conference, you have multiple men coming from various places, the West Indies, Nigeria. You had a president from Nigeria. You had W.D. Du Bois in the house. You had various men from America, and you also had Booker T. Now, among these men at that time, Booker T is about 15 years roundabout in the implementation of Tuskegee, with the multitude of educational systems that he's developing. Though all the men there are educated and well prepared to play their position, Booker T is a shining star, because the thing about this is that what they're trying to accomplish has to be implemented, and at that point Booker T is the only one who is actually implementing what Pan-African will come to be, by the fact that he has an institution in play where he's building and mastering men for their skills, See, this Pan-African thing is about instituting a skill set to rise you up from the condition that you're in 1900. And you cannot find this type of ideology implanted in any literature better than you can find in the Bible. Because in the same way that Jesus sent out his 12 apostles to go out and preach the gospel to the world at that time, also are these men setting out to go and teach the world, to bring it together and to rise the world up. And that is why my position is that the concepts of the Bible are rooted into Pan-Africanism, because if you name another system, we don't have Islam in the aspect of the African American in America at that time. Any system like Vadum, it is not a apostatizing system. It cares not about the rest of the world. It only deals with the people in its particular region at that time. So those types of systems are not capable of developing Pan-African. To develop Pan-African, you must have a proselytizing concept.
Okay. So now, James, you know where we at. We dealing with the root of Pan-Africanism.
Yes, sir.
Dealing with the abolitionist movement, with the Prince Hall, with the Martin Delaney's, with the David Walkers, with the different people that came before Booker T, that came before Garvey, and was basically gumbo-lized in the Marcus Garvey, saying that he's the one that gave us the flag and took this further than anything. And in his declarations, he also speak up on invoking God and things of this nature. So we know it's rooted in Christianity. How much information could you give us about this, birth of Pan-Africanism?
Okay, no problem. Well, yeah, I mean, first, I want to respectfully, I want to correct one thing you said earlier about Prince Hall. It was not your fault, but he was not a preacher. That's a common misconception. You probably have read that somewhere, but people write all kind of crazy stuff. So I just want to make sure I put that out there so we got correct information for the people. In terms of your question, I would hold that Pan-Africanism was not birthed directly from Christianity. Okay, but I would hold that those early founders of it, like you said, Booker T. Washington, a person like Prince Hall, Martin Delaney, or whomever else, that they utilized the Bible and they utilized the Christian religion as a means to an end and as a means of justification for the strategies and the political actions which they were proselytizing. Okay, so I would agree that Christianity was used as a medium. I wouldn't say necessarily that it birthed Pan-Africanism per se, but I would say that it gave those individuals a common lingua franca, a common language where they could exchange information with. Okay, I'm reminded of in the I think it was 1883, I think it was. I have an article, because I'm also, for those who don't know me, I'm a genealogist as well. I have an article where one of my direct ancestors, he was a minister in the African Methodist Episcopal Church. Notice the African Methodist, okay? Where they actually were taking up a collection and donating money to start a Christian college in South Africa. But this effort was being led by Bishop Henry McNeil Turner. Okay, and if anybody knows him, yes, he was a believer in the Bible, but that man was one of the most radical clergymen that we have produced in the United States. And as Dr. John Henry Clark said, it's a shame that we have forgotten Bishop Turner. So we need to always make sure we lift up his name, because that's where you get the roots with Bishop Turner and going back, where you get the roots of liberation theology that you'll see later on with someone like a Malcolm or Dr. King or whomever else you want to talk about today. So, in a nutshell, I would say when you look at even David Walker, David Walker's logic was simple. He said, well, if you're a Christian and I'm a Christian and the Bible says you can't enslave another Christian, you obviously ain't a Christian because you enslaving me. So therefore I can take your head off. That was his logic in a nutshell, So But yeah, I'll know.
I mean, that was a great add-on. So, brother Chris, knowledge, you with us now, or you kind of in and out, or what's your situation? When you get a chance, let me know, chime in. But Chris, you up? Christianity, as you've been hearing people speaking stuff, we got
Yeah.
kind of like those that disagree, those that agree. It's kind of two for two here. We kind of split. So wherever you go and wherever knowledge come in, that it'll move the scale a little way left or right. But what is your
Yeah.
viewpoint on Christianity and its roots in Pan-Africanism or Pan-African roots in Christianity?
Right. Well, honestly, I don't really know the technical history of Pan-Africanism like others might, but I mean, I know the idea of it. It does have that Exodus um, type thing about redemption, things like that, and the kingdom. That's the idea to escape the hells of slavery and oppression, and live in peace and harmony and things like that. So yeah, using the term Pan Africanism to me is kind of nostalgic, and it's difficult because it's not really it's kind of an attack on the so-called black identity or whatever. But I don't see anything wrong in anything anyone said so far. Christianity definitely at the roots of Garveyism, things like that. So I totally agree.
Right. So people, if you follow the conversation, let me sum it up a little bit. And like I said, knowledge, just holler at me. Let me know your situation when you get a chance. The Bible speaks in Acts about everybody selling everything and coming together and dispersing it to everyone that has need. You know what I'm saying? This is a good theme for Pan-Africanism. The scattering of a people, a dark-skinned melanated people, and gathering them from the diaspora of the world. This is biblical. So, as you see, as I stated earlier, with the declaration that Garvey wrote up, y'all could just type it in, the Declaration of the Negro from the UNIA, and you'll see that he spoke a lot about his plans and what he wanted to see. And so we know he provoked God in there. He provoked the Lord in there. And he also talked about the year of the Lord, which is Christian era, common era, so on and so forth. So this was the paradigm that we was facing at that time and the real birth of Pan-Africanism. People saying different things, and y'all heard them. Just go back and check them out. But the birth of the flag and the movement truly was Marcus Garvey's. I don't think none of us will disagree at this point. So now what we're going to do, we're going to move into the counter-intelligent part. And the way I'm going to ask this question is, if Christianity was the root or the main, I just say dogma, just to, use the terminology, doctrine and teachings of the people, or the common thread of our culture at the time, then where do all this other stuff come from? Like the birth of the Moorish Science Temple, the Nation of Islam, because I believe this is what was the next progression in the black movement, in the liberation movement. And so we don't see the red, black, and green flag and things of that nature. So we're going to go to Shakespeare, and we're going to start now dealing with these other so-called intelligence or intellectual theologies and things that start, seeping its way into our liberation movement. As y'all know, I did a show earlier this week dealing with, the the black liberation arms of theology, because theology is an arm that we must use also in the struggle. So, Shakespeare, could you now start taking us into where people left the Booker T, the Garvey plan movement, and start trying to take this legacy and shape it and mold it in a different direction and counter that which they was laying down?
Right. Well, one of the main faces that you can see in this counter movement was led by W.B. Du Bois and the NAACP. You hear the brother just said something. I don't know if he said that Bishop Turner was his kinfolk or whatever, but he talked about the works that he was doing in South Africa, and it might have been about that time when Bishop Turner was in South Africa, where South Africa banned the importation of the African American to the country, because when they introduced the African Methodist Church and that motto in South Africa, when you go into South African history, you can see that when they implemented Christianity, and now this Christianity that I'm talking about is Negro Christianity. So, some people have, like they think of Christianity and they think of the Roman Catholic Church or any one of these different denominations, but the Christianity that we deal with, that birthed up out of slavery, has its own identity, just like you'll see a church called the Greek Orthodox Church. So this church, this Greek Orthodox Church, it was for the purpose of doing something for the Greeks, or the Ethiopian Orthodox Church. Its purpose was shaped around the Ethiopian mindset. This Christianity that we have in America was shaped off of our mindset. So, of course, you will see various elements of the African culture, of various cultures in it, and there's nothing wrong with that. But when Bishop Turner and various other people went to South Africa and established a church there, from that church, they identified all of the resistance movements that pretty much sprang up in South Africa and other places where other missionaries from America went and established a church, and then that church was directly connected to all of the resistance movements in those countries.
Are you talking about, let me ask you a specific question. Are you talking about the NCBC, which is a National Committee of Black Churchmen?
I don't know if that was actually around then, but just the AME Church that was established in the 1700s by Absalom Jones and Richard Allen.
Okay.
They had various AMEs all over the country, and all of them had a missionary program. And everywhere those missionaries went, whether it was the Congo or South Africa or Western Africa or Haiti, wherever they went, those churches were connected with all of the liberation movements and all of the resistance to white rule. To where if you go into the records, the white people was talking about this Christianity that these American Negroes brought, and how when they brought this Christianity didn't look like the Christianity that the white folks was practicing. So I say all that to say is that one of the fears of white people came directly from the Negro Christianity. So when you start seeing counter movements, people coming with different ideas or different tactics, you pretty much have to start with W.B. Du Bois as being one of the main faces, in the NAACP. And everywhere where these Christian men went and dealt with you know, Africa and dealt with the resistance movements. You see Du Bois or the NAACP going there and undermining the movement. So, for example, Garvey was setting up to establish, you know, a headquarters in Liberia, and then you see Du Bois sent to Liberia, and he tell the colonial governments that was in the neighboring countries that watch Marcus Garvey. He's gonna come and try to overthrow all of the colonial governments or whatever, this, that, and the other. But basically, it was Du Bois who went and undermined the UNIA going to Liberia. Du Bois is also directly involved with getting Firestone tires in Liberia in place of Marcus Garvey. So now here it is. We have a dude who's called a Pan-Africanist, and then this is also the same dude who went and undermined the Garvey movement. Now, from a religious perspective, this is significant because Du Bois was an atheist. And Du Bois also told his atheist comrades to go into the churches. You don't have to believe what the church is talking about, but go in there and control and undermine the people. And they did just that. So like a brother mentioned, Bishop Turner, it was 1,000 Bishop Turners. Carter G. Woodson wrote a book called The History of the Negro Church, and it'll give you a list of the preachers all across the United States and what they was talking about. But after 1930, you barely see a preacher that comes from the mold of a Bishop Turner.
Okay.
Now, it wasn't that the doctrine of the Bible changed. It was that the people who were put in these positions, you know, was never Christians in the first place, but they were coming to subvert the movement.
Okay. Let's go to Nyame right quick. You heard what he said. Du Bois. He said Du Bois was an atheist. So after this Christian you know, scramble that was taking over the world, as it says in the Bible, you know, man, it turned the world upside down. These brothers was trying to turn the world upside down. We get atheism perspective from Du Bois, but is it true that from your Pan-African studies and history and stuff that you know, Islam was like a branch that came up out of there with the person of like Noble Jew Ali saying that Marcus Garvey was a forerunner for him, you know, to bring him in, the prophet unto the people, and bring Islam in the Circle 7, and then you got you know, the Nation of Islam being birthed with W.E. What his name, Farad Muhammad or whatever. So is it true that these things followed that, and the red, black, and green flag, you know, kind of took a downslide?
Yeah. There was a lot of subversion during Garvey and then after Garvey died. I mean, when they kicked Garvey out the country. And from my studies, yeah, Du Bois was heavily in the subversion because he was controlled by Jews within the NAACP. Also, you had it wasn't the FBI at the time; it was, I think, the Bureau of Investigations with
Yeah, Hoover.
J. Edgar Hoover coming against any movement. So we could name names, but the people behind it was still the same old colonialist, imperialist factions. That whenever we as a collective try to move forward as a people, they come in and they try to stomp it out. And one of the ways that they do it is divide and conquer. So you have this 5 million man Garvey institution, and he's no longer running it. So when we go back in hindsight, it's 2020. Um, uh, Drew Ali was a great man to try to help his people, and so was Elijah Muhammad. But they should have tried to keep the organization going. Maybe start a group within the organization and fight to keep the organization going, fight to keep the people together. But instead, what happens is we begin to divide ourselves along religious lines or along these religious identifiers. And it's going to go across the board. It's going to be Christian, it's going to be Muslim, different factions of Muslim, different factions of Christians. And to me, that was a government psyop to make us walk away from economics, politics, and identifying as one people. So if we move away from politics and economics as one people, then they can start isolating us into all these different groups, and it's easy for them to control. In retrospect, Garvey made bad decisions also. He had too much control over the organization. And you can see when he was taken out, there was nobody that was able, or no group of people that was able to fight to keep the organization together, because he controlled too much of it. So that's a lesson within itself. But the main subversive entity is the government itself. And how they do it, they keep us divided along these religious and ideological lines, that the most important thing is the upliftment of the people, make sure the people is taken care of. We kind of lose sight of that because we're fighting against each other, seeing who's going to be top dog.
Okay, very nice put, and I believe that's where we're trying to take this conversation, that based up on Christian values, morals, principles, narratives, mythologies, or whatever one want to call it, it was pushing this movement, and then all of a sudden now it took a stumble. And we know that it comes back later in the form of the red, black, and green and stuff. But I want to move on to Pit Boss now, brother Sci-Fi. And could you speak on, the things that was countering that movement coming out of the hands of those that use Christianity and stuff for a good mode, and these mythologies or whatever one want to call them, for a good mode. And then we have people like Drew Ali coming straight in saying, well, he was just a forerunner for me. And then we got Farad Muhammad coming in, and it's questionable if he's white or black. It's questionable that as Brother Nyame was saying, the FBI or the CIA or this, which became the FBI and CIA, knew about this movement, knew about their texts and things of that nature. Why was they not trying to stop the birth of the Nation of Islam, the Moor Science Temple, and things of that nature? Do you see this as being a problem?
Well, we have to look at the picture a little broader than this narrow perspective, as when you look at the balance between subversion and counterattack on the black community. In this particular time that you're mentioning, let's say around 1927, somewhere in that time frame, where Garvey is being kicked out of the country. Now you have this Garvey UNIA faction has to go underground for purpose. This Garvey's movement was attacked, as you guys mentioned, by J. Edgar Hoover. He sent in a man named James Wormley to go in and to counter this movement. Now, the only time, if you think about it in today, the only time the FBI gets involved in the affairs of black organizations is when they are becoming a threat. So if you don't see the involvement of the destruction of an organization, such as NAACP, who's been long time running, 100 years, it's obvious that they do not consider them a threat. Although they may be observing them and keeping tabs on them, they're not a threat. So looking at the options on the table, you have a few other ideologies that are forming. You have Elijah Muhammad moving off with Farad Muhammad to bring about the Nation of Islam. Now, the Nation of Islam, being that they're taking a different leader. For the Nation of Islam, Christ is no longer the forefront leader, and now it'll be Muhammad. And so they'll fly a different flag. Thus, all of the black men that they are building up and creating into powerhouses, they're coming under a different ideology at this moment. At the same time, Noble Drew Ali is taking another approach. He's going back to claim to bring together Arabs, Turkish, blacks, Indians. He's bringing the Moorish science to the building. So now you have these two factions who are trying to be self-identified, to try to make an identity for themselves. And as this perpetrates throughout the decades, you'll get to a point where black power struggle is going to clash. So at this moment, you got Garvey dying out. You have the NAACP and the elite progressing. You have the Nation of Islam progressing. You have Noble Drew Ali progressing. And these are the frameworks of black identity for the 30s, the 40s, the 50s, until we start to getting into more clashing that will happen in the 60s. By the time you get to the 60s, now we have ideologies that are fully developed. We had a discussion about this the other day. In the 60s, now we're getting into where does the ideology, where was it and where did it go to after this decline of the red, black, and green? Because you'll notice that the NAACP isn't flying a red, black, and green flag, pushing Pan-African in that format. Nation of Islam is not flying the red, black, and green flag and pushing Pan-African, and neither is Noble Drew Ali flying that flag or pushing that ideology. So it's completely underground at this moment. And then we have the faction of the New Black, or the Black Panther Party. Well, when you examine these groups, they're fighting for black power, but now they're fighting under different ideologies. And from these ideologies, we don't see this black nationalist ideology that Garvey had or Booker T had. We now have a more socialist, Marxist, communist ideology out of some factions, and then out of Malcolm X, you have more of a black nationalist ideology. So some of that is surviving because they still have that teaching. It's just not put to the forefront. And then, you know, after the ending of the 60s and the power struggle there, when we look at what's happening today, most of our conscious community is flying the banner of the red, black, and green. It's kind of integrated into everybody's concept. Now the question that we have to get to is, how do we get back to the red, black, and green? How is this established back into our conscious? What was we're missing that, why don't we have a little bit of Noble Drew Ali concept in it, or Nation of Islam in it, or the Black Panthers in it? Because as you examine a bulletproof system, this Pan-African is working. That's just a small summary of it.
Okay. So now we're going to go to Brother James. Peace to DJ Black. And also, once again, peace to Knowledge. Y'all come in the question and answer, but we're gonna try to stay with this rotation that we got going here. So, brother James, you up next. So we talking about moving from the Christian roots to other ideologies coming along. They're still trying to liberate us as a people, but yet they coming with a different doctrine, different ideology, and people will question if it's effective. But as the brother Pit Boss said it so effectively, that now that even when we see the red, black, and green coming back, it's missing some of those key figures because we know the Moors do not want to claim to be black, nor do they want to claim to, fit in that paradigm. The Nation of Islam, as well as the Moors, and some people, they like to claim that the Bible was given to us by the white man. So, this is what we dealing with. How could you speak on this situation?
Wow, that's a big question. I would say the thing that has to be first understood is that you've always had various groups that were not incorporated into Christianity. Okay, if you read Dr. Michael Gomez's book, Exchanging Our Country Marks, and also another book of his called Black Crescent, which is a history of Muslims of African descent in the Western Hemisphere. He talks about this concept of churched and unchurched Africans in the Americas. Okay, so what I think you see when you talk about someone like Noble Drew Ali or the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, although they went with an Islamic perspective, they were representative of, you could say it might have been the minority in our community, but there was and still is a group of people in our community who you ain't getting them to go to church, and yeah, a lot of us do go the Islamic path, but then you also had those who were not even going that route. You had different groups of black Israelites, for lack of a better term. You had groups who were still practicing West African traditional spirituality, as well, to varying degrees. So you get that element regardless. But then again, I think, to go back to the question of how did the red, black, and green, how did that kind of formulate into the modern context? I think that what has happened over the course of the 1900s is that we as a people, at least those on the ground. Now, I can't speak on those elites who you see on TV with a nice shiny suit. I ain't got a shiny suit, okay? But those folks, can do those little beefs or whatever they want to do. But I think those of us on the ground have recognized and really have always known that stuff doesn't work. The competing and whatnot. I mean, when you look at W.E.B. Du Bois, right? Because I know we were talking about him earlier. In my opinion, W.E.B. Du Bois could have an argument with himself about 5 different times, depending on the time period in which you're talking about him. Because W.E.B. Du Bois, when he wrote Souls of Black Folk, is not really the same man who wrote the Philadelphia Negro. Is not the same man. I mean, there's so many different sides of him alone. Okay, I mean, he got to a point later in his life where he said, "Man, Garvey was right. I should have never went against that man." So I think that over time, by the time you get to the 80s and the 90s and now, we've realized as a people that competing against each other does not work. Comparing and contrasting, having friendly debates and discussions, that's okay. But again, the goal should be, what are you doing? What are we doing as a people, as an organization, or as a coalition on the ground? Because that's the only way that you're really going to get liberation. I mean, you can talk to me about the moon and stars all day, but if you're not helping, like the brother said about economics, we're not getting some social programs going. We don't have hospitals. You don't have whatever. You're not. What are you doing? So to me, I'm gonna quote one of my good friends and brothers. He always says, "Don't tell me about your religion. Just show me the results." And that's really, kind of where my stance is on. I try to follow those ancestors and those elders who have produced something, even if it's something that's flawed that we need to improve upon. At least they produce something. So anybody who hates on the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, I'm like, man, look, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad got so many people off of drugs and prostitution and everything else and got them into being productive citizens. Marcus Garvey, as much as we could talk about him, he got brothers and sisters, raised them up. You see what I'm saying? So if you following a leader or a teacher or ideology that's not raising people up, regardless of what it is, to me, it's synthesized, it's falsified, and you need to get out of it. Because, I mean, eventually it's going to come to light.
Most definitely. So now we want to go back to Shakespeare, and what what I want to do now is hopefully everybody listening to everybody perspective, right? So we kind of know the perspective that's kind of clashing, the agreed upon things of that nature. So one thing I like that you brought out was the Israelite point of view. Most people not talking about that because what we doing now is we looking at Christianity, Islam, and Judaism. Because when them brothers came, they came with the rabbi stuff, the Wentworth and the Fords, and and all the different people that birthed that Hebrew Israelite movement over there on the East Coast. Even when Dr. Ben came, he brought the Ethiopian Falashan Jew perspective, where we the Black Jew, which is a Pan-African book, if you did not know. So we're not even gonna jump in that bucket. We already know about the Hebrew Israelite stuff, and pretty much, I represent some of that to a degree, being an Israelite, or believing I'm an Israelite. So now we're gonna kind of leave off the theological point, right, and deal with things that dealt with the STEM program and start going into the more liberal arts and things of that nature. So, Sci-Fi, you got the floor. If you could tell us how this vocation moved to poetry and how even Booker T said itself in the Atlanta Compromise, quote unquote compromise, how it's more honor in tilling a field than it is, writing a poem. If you could take it from there, I appreciate it.
Was you referring that to me or the Sharp Spear?
Sharp Spear, we keeping the same rotation. Then we're gonna start.
Okay.
Then we're gonna start opening it up a little bit more.
Okay. Yeah. So, like the brother said, or like I said earlier, one of the things that Booker T did was this concept of Pan-Africanism that he got from, the ancestors in America. He looked at Pan-Africanism as being heaven, let's just say, right? So now you asked me about the skills, right?
Yeah, we're talking about, let's go more to the the skills and the vocation.
Education.
Yeah, vocational skills versus liberal arts, because now we done touched on the theological point. Let's get into the industry standpoint and the intellectual standpoint, the working man and the elite man that writes and stuff.
Right.
You see what I'm saying?
Right. Well, yeah. One of the things that brought Booker T to prominence was the so-called Atlanta Compromise speech. And if you really analyze that document, you will see that it was an economic document, And one of the things we have to remember is that 15% of the white males in America died during the Civil War. And because of the Industrial Revolution that had took place, they needed a lot of laborers and skilled people, to build off of this scientific progress. So because of these 15% of the white population was killed during the Civil War, the white man decided that he was going to start bringing in immigrants from different countries to fill the void. And what Booker T was saying in that compromise speech was, don't call no foreigner into the country to do all that stuff. We should do it. Give it to us. So one of the differences between the education that Booker T taught, like you went to, is better to till the field than to write a poem. And actually, he had quoted that from one of the ancestors named George Washington Williams, who might have been one of the first historians that actually documented not only things in Africa, but in America too. And so with these skills, what Booker T was doing with his educational model was like they wouldn't write grammar about how the Pilgrims landed in America. They would write grammar about how to run a blacksmith shop and all of these other various trades that sci-fi is going to lay out. It was over 40 trades. And so how it was practical to us, or when we talk about, like, so, for example, when we were fresh out of slavery, most blacks in the South lived in a one-cabin house. Booker T taught them how to expand the house, how to put a fireplace on the house to keep the family warm, how to conduct the house, how to clean the house, how to be on time, how not to waste time. You know, all of these things are arts of civilization. And since we had all of this progress that we accumulated over the slave period, when it came time to let it out, we see that from emancipation, within like 50 years, we made more progress than any other race on the planet, because we took this education and we made it practical to our daily lives, so that we became not only an economic foundation, but an economic threat. Because now, by us being masters of science, the white man had to come to us, and he saw himself being, you know, dependent on us for our knowledge. So eventually they have to put together a subversive group that was going to take that knowledge and that skill out of usefulness to the black community and make it useful for the country, and still denying us our basic civil rights.
Yeah, everybody make sure you mute your mic as you come in. We're going to have Q&A around 9 o'clock or 9:30, depending on how the flow go. If you want to call in and listen in, if you're on the move or about to go about in the street or whatever, it's 312-985-7856. Call in, mute your mic. You can listen in and move around and don't have to be stuck at your computer. You got more to say, bro? I hate that, you know, Sharp Spirit. Did you fall off?
I moved my phone. Go ahead.
Okay. Okay, well, let's move on a little bit. And that was a great layout. So what we're dealing with, people, here is physical labor and intellectual smarts. Basically, working with your hands, being able to build something instead of philosophizing about it. So this right here, I believe, is also a countermeasure to stop what Pan-Africanism was birthed out of, right? We're going to have a sister come through next week, and we're going to talk more about Booker T directly. For those that don't know, the sister wrote a book about it. So if you'd like to hear about it, she will bring that information to the table next week. Just check my page out for more information on that. I'm not going to give it to you here. You got to do a little work on your own. But we're going to Brother Nyame now. And could you speak on, you know, the working with your hands and the intellectual thing that took people out of, you know, being in the physical workforce and stuff, and allowing the workforce to go into the hands of the immigrants or the Hispanic people that was coming across the border already, but now they flooding the border and things of that nature. Could you please?
Yeah, well, the problem is every nation needs intellectuals. Intellectuals is what plans your strategy and teaches you technique. If you're a general, a four-star general, do you know how much schooling it takes to be a four-star general? How much study and planning of past military wars, nations? So you need your intellectuals in any nation building. We keep talking about Booker T. Booker T was a great man, but Booker T, in that Atlanta Compromise, went to white people and said, look, we don't want to be equal with you. We don't want these civil rights. We're going to compromise. Just let us work hard and show that we can be good people, that we can be respected people. Just give us a chance to prove ourselves to you. And even though, as the brother says, we outworked everybody, white people didn't come back and say, you know what, gosh darn it, you guys are such good people. We're going to give you civil rights and we're going to make you equal with us. What they did was say, these people are a threat to us, and let's put them under attack. So in an analysis of what Booker T did, he actually, in that compromise, made us weaker than he made us stronger. Because not only, and that's a lesson for us today, the stronger we become as a collective, people are not going to receive us with open arms. It's going to come under attack. And do we have a strategy to stand against that attack? Is there a strategy out there that when we become strong and people become fearful of our strength, how are we going to withstand it? Because, and I say this all the time, a person in power never gives an ounce of power away. Never. You have to earn that. You're going to earn it with hard work. You're going to get shovels and dig in the ground, and you're going to have to stay up late at night, reading books, strategizing to empower yourselves as a people. It's going to take both the intellectuals and the hard people working with their bare hands, because nobody is going to give us anything. And then if they see us gaining any power, we're going to be under attack. One of the issues that I see that's a big problem is the prison industrial complex. Let's say we just start getting our brothers and sisters out of these prisons, keeping them out of their prisons. They're taking care of their family, and there's nobody going to these prisons. Well, that's going to pose a problem, because that inmate makes these corporations $10,000 a month. Who's going to pay those bills now? So as a people, the better we become, somebody's going to lose profit from that. So there has to be a strategy in place if there's another psychological attack, if there's another physical attack, like in Tulsa, Oklahoma. How do we protect ourselves? How do we protect our assets? How do we protect our capital? How do we protect our children's future? So all of that is part of it. We're going to have to work hard. We're going to have to get back in the trades and take the trades back over. But we also need those intellectuals as far as teaching us tactics and strategy. Like one of our greatest statisticians and tacticians was John Henry Clark, Amos Wilson. These guys were intellectuals, so we need them both.
Okay, now we're going to sci-fi Pit Boss, aka we talking about the industrial complex and the intellectual complex that people try to build with the the schooling and stuff. So how do you see this? You could take it from the Booker T standpoint, you could take it from the Garvey, you could take it from how it evolved into something else and we couldn't build our infrastructure. I don't know exactly how you want to deal with it, but it's a lot on the table that you can get with.
I just break it down so easily. The brother said, he mentioned Dr. Henry Clark. Let's analyze this intellectual knowledge that the brother said that we need so bad, right? Okay, we definitely do need to elevate our minds and be intellectual. But what is the complaint about the Mexican immigrant coming into the country today by the millions? What are they doing? The threat is that they're taking the jobs. This is the claim, right? So You drive down the street and you see a Mexican worker working on the street. You know, he's cutting your grass. He's doing all the technical jobs. So the power of the United States when it comes to schools is MIT. This is a technical school. This is the school that gives you the nuclear bomb and the missile. This is the school that designs the protection for the country. The philosophers are great, but it's these technical people that run things. Right now we're on the internet. All this is technology. We're viewing this on television and on the radio, and these things are technology. So if you ask yourself that the compromising speech of Booker T weakened us, here is what that weakening gave you. He gave you farming, trucking, fruit growing, care and management of horses and mules, husbandry, swine raising, beef production and slaughtering, vegetation in the form of agriculture. He gave you veterinary science, blacksmithing, brick making, plastering, tile setting, carpentry, electronics, engineering, foundationing, harness making, carriage trimming, machine shop practice, plumbing and steam fitting, painting, printing, wood turning, sawmilling, steam engineering, shoemaking, tin smithing, tailoring, greenhouse works, road building, landscaping, gardening, bookkeeping, accounting, nurse training, dressmaking, ladies tailoring, cooking, laundry, soap making, basket making, broom making, mattress making, upholstery, and on and on and on. The fabrics of what is called building a nation. Now, you could give me all the books of Dr. Clark, Ivan Van Sertima, Leonard Jeffries. I can master those books. And when I get home and my roof leaking, I won't know a damn thing on how to get up there and plaster up that hole. Because if you want to be a master of yourself, you got to first learn how to feed yourself. You got to know how to clothe yourself. You have to know how to house yourself if you want to build yourself up. This is why the threat was an industrial education. See, it is the industrial aspect of America that made America great. It is the industrial aspect of China today that makes China great. You go into the store and you buy a toy made in China, made in India, made in Taiwan. This is what you call industrial. Now, if you want to go and get liberal arts, then you get a great speech. You get a great song, little joyful music. But you can't eat that. You can't start a fire with that. Weakening the community was undermining the Pan-African movement and replacing it with liberal arts.
Okay, with that said, let's go to Brother James. You see how the conversation is flowing. We got industry, we got education. Learn how to write a good poem, learn how to give a great speech, a lecture, to building houses and building a community and building a weaponry and different things that we need to protect ourselves, or even building that burn-proof house or that bomb-proof house. Speak on it, brother.
Okay.
Somebody needs to mute themselves. Somebody is come unmuted. Go ahead, brother.
Okay. Well, in the interest of full disclosure, I think this whole discussion is something that I guess I'm particularly close to as a graduate of Howard University. I mean, I've studied this time and again. I mean, recently, and also another thing, I recently wrote a chapter for a upcoming book on Dr. Du Bois. So we know that they always try to pit those two against each other, Du Bois and Booker T. However, I'm of the opinion that you need both at the end of the day. I mean, you need somebody who knows how to write a constitution and understands bylaws and understands those things when you're setting up government or non-government entities. But you also do need the person who knows how to build and how to structure things. You really, I don't see why we have to pick and choose at the end of the day. You know what I mean? Everybody else is doing both. I mean, the same way that the brother was talking about, you got folks in China building computers and doing things in the industry. Trust and believe, they're still reading Confucius. Okay, so you need both in order to raise up a nation or to heal a nation. At the end of the day, I think that
One question, one,
unfortunately,
one sec. Let me ask you a question with that because that's
uh,
in
yeah,
it.
go ahead.
If you need both, which one would you say is foundational? You need first.
You need the in terms of you're talking about linear in a linear way. You need to have the structure first. You need to have the technical laid out first. So because the thing is, who's building? If you're going to have a classroom, you need somebody to build the building first. At the end of the day, and I think that was something that you had back then that you don't necessarily have today in certain ways. However, I think that back then, when you talk about the time period of Booker T. Washington and W.B. Du Bois and others, I think what makes the Atlanta Compromise speech so controversial, because even I feel mixed opinions about when I read it, is that just because we're talking about industry and we're talking about building ourselves up, building from the ground up, pulling ourselves up by the bootstrap and all that, that doesn't mean that you have to sacrifice, especially at that time, sacrifice your civil liberties, sacrifice. I mean, at the end of the day, I understand why Dr. Du Bois uh, and Booker T was going at it, because at the end of the day, back then, jokers was getting lynched daily. I mean that. I mean, when you're talking about people's lives, I mean, the stakes were so high back then. That I understand what Booker T was trying to do. He was trying. See, Booker T was trying to be a master uh, at deception. Okay, if you really look at it, because he's telling the white man one thing, he's trying to give us a means to an end on the other hand. Then he's being a bit of a gangster on another side with the Tuskegee machine. I mean, he was doing so much stuff that a lot of folks, if you look at like Mary Church Terrell, W.B. Du Bois, those folks who kind of went against him at a certain point, it's because they felt like there was a line that he crossed, both behind closed doors and in public. But the moral of what he was talking about, of building up with your hands, learning those technical skills, you can't argue with that. I mean, Garvey told us the same thing. You cannot debate that, but at the same time, you need those folks who know how to sit down and understand how to be delegates at a conference or a convention. You need somebody who can be a diplomat, who knows how to speak well and do all those other things. I mean, you need both at the end of the day in order to make it work. We don't have to, I mean, if the Chinese don't have to pick and choose, or if the Indians don't have to pick and choose, why does the African? That's my main message.
Okay. So we didn't cover a lot of ground here. We didn't cover a lot of ground, people. We done went from the theological standpoint of Pan-Africanism to the physical labor, intelligence standpoint. Working and being smart standpoint. All this is nation building, people. All this is nation building. So let's see. What do I want to guide this conversation now? I mind y'all once again, y'all hearing what's going on. Y'all see the differences in ideologies just here at the table now. And we got a couple people that hadn't even chimed in yet, that's waiting to chime in, like Knowledge and DJ Black. We got Chris back here still. We got a couple more brothers and sisters on the line. So we about to get it in another 30. If you not online, if you're not tuned in, you're going to miss it. So if anything else going on and you over there watching or listening to somebody else, you about to miss it, because we about to open it up and we about to let this thing collide. And it's like turn down for what? We finna turn up, people, as they like to say. So I'm gonna freelance it a little bit. and start opening it up a little bit. Shakespeare, you can start it off. I know some things were stated earlier you probably disagree with. We still want to deal with both aspects, the theological standpoint, as well as you know, the industry and I guess I say vocation and liberal arts, because a lot of this, I'm gonna start chiming in too. A lot of this needs to be addressed. So please address some of these things. Y'all take notes. Make sure y'all taking notes of all these oppositions that, you know, opposites that we got formulating here too. So go ahead, brother.
Yeah, I know that Dr. John Henry Clark, he has a video where he talks about Booker T. Washington set the black community back with the speech in Atlanta. But I challenge anybody who feels that way to look at black people's progress from that speech for just 10 years, because Dr. John Henry Clark said go from 1895, when that speech was given, to 1906, which is 10 years. And he said in that 10 years, black people were set back 100 years. But if you go to the statistics, you will find out that that's a lie. So now we will have to analyze a public intellectual that will tell you that Booker T. Washington weakened the community. In fact, what we find is by 1906, black people own 15 million acres of land. Who advocated to buy land? Definitely not W.B. Du Bois. Who advocated the skills to build on the land and to turn the land into wealth? Definitely not W.B. Du Bois. Actually, what we can find is if W. Du Bois never existed, black people wouldn't hurt at all. But if Booker T. Washington didn't exist, black people would hurt, because it's clear history. All of the statistics say so. What the statistics says is that Tuskegee Institute was superior to all of the white institutions. The president of education at Columbia University in the times of Booker T. Washington said, we had to take the model of Tuskegee and institute it at Columbia. We have statistics where Booker T. Washington in this time period that we're talking about produced more self-made millionaires than Columbia, Harvard, and Yale combined. So that's propaganda that these so-called intellectuals put out to subvert Pan-Africanism. They didn't counter Booker T with another institution. Booker T built Tuskegee. If Du Bois and his crew thought that, look, somebody's phone is flashing.
Yeah, well, everybody mute your mic if you're not speaking, please.
We see that Booker T. Washington built an institution, Tuskegee. If the opposition felt differently or had a different goal, then what they were supposed to do was build an institution to prove your point. But they didn't use institutions to prove the point. They wrote books. They broke up meetings. They whispered in people's ears. They worked with the KKK. The Boys tried to hire the Ku Klux Klan to burn down Tuskegee. This is documented history that nobody talks about.
Okay.
So when we analyze these so-called scholars, analyze what they have to say about Booker T. Washington, and then let you know what side of the fence that they're on.
Okay, okay. Let's move to Nyame a little bit, because I know he might have something to say about that. We finna start opening up where people just can talk to people, and whatever's on the table, we're gonna deal with it, and everybody chime in and respect the mic. So it's about to heat up, people, but let's get Nyame in, then we're gonna move on to Pitt Boss, and James, and then we're gonna start opening it up, people.
All
So
right. First of all, I just want to explain what the liberal arts are. And art is part of liberal arts, and literature is part of liberal arts, but also language. You need to know how to speak and how to write. Mathematics, I think that's important, and the natural sciences, biology, chemistry, astronomy, psychology is part of it. Uh, the social science, economics, geography, political science, history. So liberal arts are important. I just want to bring that point out. But also in Pan-Africanism, I mean, we just can't stop at Du Bois and Booker T. I mean, that was early in the 1900s. Here we are in 2016. There's a lot that happened during that time. So, and it's like we just stuck at that time period.
well, this is your opportunity to bring in.
Right, right. And what happened is that the momentum of the movement spread around the world. That momentum of I am human and I deserve to be treated as a human spread around the whole world and started revolutions everywhere. And the fight was against European colonialism and imperialism. It wasn't really against each other, but it was against European colonialism and imperialism in the form of its many different institutions around the world and in this country. So then we have to recognize that those institutions, their main objective is to make us subservient to those systems forever. Make us subservient and make our children's children subservient to those systems and to the heirs of those systems. So what came after that to resist, it might not have been as effective as needed, but what came after those men 30 years later, 50 years later, to resist those systems to keep us, that try to keep us subservient. And what I mean by subservient is psychologically, we don't resist that we pay a debt to a banking cartel, that they get money from our labor as much as they need it. When Obama gave the banking cartel $7 trillion, nobody said anything because there's nothing we can do. That's how powerful they are. And they're going to maintain that power forever if there is no resistance to that. What systems do we have in place that's going to stand up against that? That's what we need to talk about. That's where the issue lies. Like I said, those systems, a lot of people call it white supremacy, but white supremacy is just an identifier of the World Bank, the IMF, the Federal Reserve. It's these systems that perpetuate the exploitation of people throughout the world. And we need to identify what worked against those systems from making a people a permanent slave class.
Okay, let's go to Pit Boss now.
Give me 1 minute and come back to me.
All right, well, let's go to James.
Yeah, I mean, in response to the brother's statement earlier, I think that there's definitely valid points. Like I said earlier, I mean, I don't think that we really have to pick, especially particularly in this day and time, since both Booker T. Washington, Du Bois, and all those others are our ancestors now. So we can drink from both fountains. It's okay. We can walk and chew gum at the same time. I think that the thing that also has to be understood that I think Brother Nyame was talking about earlier is that we've been talking about a certain time period, but you also have to go back and before them. I think you mentioned Prince Hall earlier, and others of that generation. Obviously you can't leave out Martin Delany, several sisters who were involved in the movement as well. At the end of the day, you need both. I mean, one of the things that I admire so much about Martin Robinson Delany is that he was so diverse in his public life and career. I mean, this man was an author, but he also was a doctor, was a physician. He also went to Harvard. He was also a military man. I mean, you know, we can, as individuals and as a collective, we can walk and chew gum at the same time, regardless of what institution we do or do not attend. Okay, whether you went to Tuskegee, whether you went to Howard, Hampton, whether you didn't go to school at all, and you just reading books and you trying to live right. I mean, at this day and time, I don't think that we should be as much comparing and contrasting as we should be doing. Let's take what works and move forward from there, because I think all of these people did what they knew how to do. You know, they were men and women of their time, but at the end of the day, I mean, heck, when I look at Garvey, I see some things with him. I'm like, man, I'm trying to do that. I'm trying to, you know, that's my New Year's resolution, is to do something Garvey did. But then there's some things I see with him, and I say, well, hey, that's something that we're gonna leave back with him, you know. And we just, you know, it's all a transition and it's all a process, you know. But we as long as your heart is in the right place, and your hands are working, I think that you're contributing to the effort, and that's all that matters to me.
All right, well, we're gonna give it back to Sharpspear now. People, 9 o'clock. We're
Wait,
gonna open it up
hey,
for.
I'm sorry. Can I say one last thing? I'm sorry, I've been holding this in.
Go ahead.
Brother Nyame, every time I see you put your video on, man, you got to be the smoothest guy on Google Hangouts. He's just sitting there with his fireplace and his, you know, he's just cooling, man. So I just want to live your life for one day. That's all I wanted to say.
I mean, you got to enjoy that when you get older. You got a little bit more to go.
Oh, I got to earn my way into the club. Okay, I got you.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, my response to that is the brother Nyame. You know, all the brothers making good point, and I think one of the reasons why the Booker T model is not antiquated is because when we look at 2016, like the brother said about, you know, Obama giving money or this, that, and the other, it still comes down to we were one of the first to make mattresses in America. We're not making mattresses we're not making no money off of mattresses no more. We're peeling open potato chips. Our people invented that, but we're not making no money back on that anymore. So when you look at right now today in the economy, what have we mastered and is our community benefiting off of it? Now we're going back to the model of Tuskegee, and there is the answer. Everybody can't be intellectual to the point where they can go sit in meetings and, you know, tactically, you know, go in there and negotiate for us, you know, that's going to benefit us. But don't believe that intellectuals wasn't being produced at Tuskegee. Don't believe that one of the first people in America to graduate with a PhD in mathematics wasn't teaching at Tuskegee. Don't think that one of the first people to graduate from Massachusetts Institute of Technology was teaching at Tuskegee. Don't forget about George Washington Carver. He was at Tuskegee. So all of the skills that those brothers mastered and taught back then is the skills that you will see an immigrant coming to the country right now, and he has a tire shop in your community, or a taco shop in your community, or he's making foreign toys and selling them in your community, or it's some white woman who your wife wants her purse, and not the purse that's made by a black woman in America. So all of our problems economically still come back to what trade or industry do we control? Because the people that's smart, their intellect is not connected to the common people. How is it that the common people don't benefit off of somebody who's jumping out the gym, scoring 30 points a game, or that's on TV playing football? How is it that a black community is not benefiting off of this talent that's connected with $1 trillion industry in America? So I think where we messing up at is that there's some new idea out there that our ancestors didn't know about when they gave us this gift of Pan-Africanism. So what we don't need is new ideas. What we need is reformation. We got something to go back to, you know, like the Sankofa bird, where we have something to look back to get back, you know, to correct ourselves, and we don't have to go 3,000 years ago. We created a civilization in America that we created, and that's what we have to revive right now in 2016. Is everybody in Harlem connected to one industry where everybody is getting a check off of the profits? Is everybody in California, is their money connected with them owning a ship that's going around the world selling black-owned, black-manufactured products? It's not. Why? That's what we should be protesting when somebody try to stop us from having economic unity. Why are we not doing that? Why is it that our scholars who know all of this information hasn't connected to the common man, and now you see the common man benefiting off of what one individual knows? We got to look back now, because we had leaders where all of their knowledge and skill was connected to the common man in the community. Is your community full of trash? Are you writing on the walls? Are you doing committing crime? Because if you committed a crime, that's against Pan-Africanism. Because the white man always used the black criminal as a way to come and disrupt the lives of solid, righteous people. So reason why I bring up the people who died back then is because since 1930, since the deportation of Marcus Garvey, our leadership has not led us to economic independence. With Pan-Africanism, birth was that we were going to govern ourselves, rule ourselves. So now we get to Brown versus Board of Education when they shut all the black schools down, destroyed the black intelligentsia that was teaching Pan-Africanism. My daddy went to a segregated school. He would never tell anybody that that school was inferior, because all of his teachers loved him and they had a responsibility to him. Do we have that today? No, we mad and we cussing out a white woman because she isn't teaching our children something that she shouldn't even have action at teaching in the first place. So the self-correcting mechanism is not finding some new idea, because there's no new idea. We got to go back to what we laid in America and revive that and take that around the world.
Let's go to Nyame now and let him respond to that, or put something new on the table. We finna start opening up, people. So if you want to speak, you know, keep your mic muted. But once we get past Nyame and James and Pitt Boss, I'm a enter into the conversation too. We about to get it in. It's about to be 9 o'clock, and that's the way I said it. So we got 9 minutes pretty much to get through that, and whatever we go over, believe me, we're gonna open up the mics after that. So Nyame.
I just want to say, I shade to what the brother just said. I agree with everything he just said. I mean, it's a little bit more complicated than just getting back to building the economics. It's a greater struggle. Different areas that we not discussing right now. You know, that's another time. And some subjects we can't even discuss on YouTube. So I gotta go at 9 o'clock. But I agree with everything he said, and my son does too.
The young black power fist is up. So James, Pit Boss, you here or not? We're gonna go to James, then we're gonna open it up, and I'll be one of the last to speak. But if y'all got something that's been laying on your heart,
I would just like to respond to the brother one more time. You know, I want to apologize if I came off as somehow trying to say that Tuskegee or that methodology was a lesser institution or anything like that. I don't want that out there. I mean, my great granddaddy, who's 97 years old, is a graduate of Tuskegee, and he's the wisest man I ever met. So I would never. I don't know if that's the way you took it, but that's I didn't want there to be any confusion.
I definitely didn't take it like that at all. Especially you going to Howard, I definitely didn't take it like that. I was just emphasizing that.
Okay, no problem. Like I said, I just wanted to make sure we were clear. But nah, I mean, I'm with you, man, and I think that the long story short of it is, one thing that we have to remember is that the civil rights movement, as it is marketed to us, is really a consumer rights movement, and it just got us on this bandwagon of consuming, but not producing. As a people, and unfortunately, I mean, we can't always look at the glass as half empty, because we still have those who are out there producing everything. The issue is we have to have an appetite as a community to consume things made by black hands. Okay, I'll be honest with you. I have my first cousin. He owns a business that's very successful. I will not say the name because I can't. But what he found is, in that particular industry, was that he's in the hair care business. What he found was, he's about 32, 33 years old with a multi-million-dollar hair care business, but he wasn't getting the business when he was going into business meetings. When he was doing it, he ended up having to hire some Indian guy to be the face of the business. Which is ridiculous, because the Indian guy is just an employee of his, but his clients think that the Indian guy is the owner. Why did he have to do that with products that only black people produce, or I mean only black people use? It all goes back to our self-image and loving and trusting each other. And so we have to give honor to Booker T. Washington and others like him, who were trying to get us to be comfortable with doing business with each other, and not worrying about what other people were doing.
Most definitely. So now, audience, anybody listening in, open up your mics. Don't bum rush it. If somebody else speaking, mute it. But if you want to speak or a point, come up, unmute yourself, and ask for the mic. Most people are respectable on this platform, so let's have it.
All right, can I speak? Is
Yeah.
it cool? All right, peace, everybody.
Peace. What up, bro?
Not much. What this is what I've been listening very carefully to everybody, and just patiently listening to them. And what I didn't hear, what I heard was a lot about was accolades. Not more about skill set, and I think that was one of the topics that was brought up. One of the questions that Carl had introduced is as far as when you're talking about laboring, and one of the brothers brought up mattresses, and we invented mattresses. We're not making money off of it. Invented potato chips, and we're not making money. We invented the majority of the stuff that the nation is making money off of. Now, when you talk about accolades, we back on to that word accolades. Most of us, we bask in the accolades of things to do that's not very, that you don't have to do much work with your hands, and to say that to cut down a tree, and what all does the tree produce, now if the foreigners come over here, they know how to cut down the trees. Not only cut down the trees, they know how to prepare the wood, and they know how to build the houses with the wood. The thing is, majority of us, we go to school to get that, it's kind of like living like the Joneses, to compare ourselves, to say, if I'm not making this type of money, then I'm not at this echelon of the society. So it's like we have to also focus in on that too, as far as our skill set, to say that if you look at the neighborhoods, our black neighborhoods are pretty much ran down, and then who you see fixing them up, and then who they hire to fix them up. When we can also have those same skill sets and fix up our own neighborhood, and we can also use these skill sets as a trade-off. If somebody owns all the land, then the person who got the skill set to cut down the wood, he can get him a piece of land and build his own house for his family as well. I mean, all these skill sets, and if somebody know how to make furniture, as far as mattresses and sofas and all that stuff, he can trade off his skill set as well to get a home for his family, and so on and so forth. And then let's talk about power. We talk about power, and then when you look at the ultimate power is the gun, and who controls, whoever had a gun, that's who has the power. In Atlanta, on Fulton Industrial and Martin Luther King. Can I be heard?
Yeah, we hear you. Go ahead.
Okay, on Fulton Industrial and Martin Luther King, you got the Glock factory. It's a private-owned company. Some white boys own it. It's a private-owned company. A couple of cats I know when they got a job there, you know, ain't like they can take the Glocks away from that place or the gunpowder away from the place or the bullets away from the place, but it's a private-owned company, meaning that these guys, they got some power, you know, to say that they can produce many Glocks they want to, many SK or HK type of guns they want to, many bullets that they want to, because they own the factory to produce that kind of stuff. We can own these same type of factories. You look at Detroit. They say Detroit is a ghost town now, and Detroit is a ghost town because all these factories went down. So now, with that being said, like the brother Umar Johnson, he's trying to build a school up or whatever, trying to get the money to build schools up. We also can put money together to go get these factories that's been closed down that a lot of European counterparts ran away from, you know. So altogether, it's like we have what we need right in front of us, but the thing about it is opening our minds, you know, to use those things. You know, it's like it's a thing to think outside the box, but you still have to use the tools inside the box. So, I mean, if anybody want to respond to what I'm saying, then go ahead. I'm gonna mute my mic, Carl.
Somebody open up if they want to. If not,
Yeah,
I'm gonna
let me respond. Yeah. Well, one of the things that you see, and that's the reason why I brought up Brown versus Board of Education 1954, is because we really can trace up to this time when black people really didn't have an identity crisis. The identity crisis really came when they destroyed and shut down all our schools and then bused us to white institutions. Now we got people who were subjected to overt racism that they never had experienced before because they knew their teachers and their principals, and like I said, they knew that they loved them and they encouraged them to be perfect in whatever it was they were doing. So now, as we look back and we see, like he gave the example of Detroit or whatever, yeah, now is the time, it's a reawakening, it's a renaissance where we have to go back and Detroit has to say, we're going to put together one business or two businesses that's profitable, and everybody in Detroit should be connected with that business. Everybody in Atlanta, break down the communities however you can. The people that have the skill set, they're going to come and do it. You got to encourage your people to do it. We got to go to all of these churches and tell the churches, are y'all hiring people in the community? If not, y'all got to get it going or we going to shut you down. If you're not pushing for us, then we need to know who you are, and we need to run them up out of our community and let them go and live amongst the people who they really is helping. Because they're not helping us out if they're not hiring us. If they're telling the government to come give us a job, then they're not helping us. Because Booker T said he wasn't producing job seekers. He was producing job creators.
Well,
So
let me hop in right quick because, you know, my Pan-Africanism coming out party was my debate with Brother Nyame, right? And in that debate, I brought out the making of a Pan-Africanist, what we're going to be talking about next week. That was the title I used because the sister did it so, favorable. But Booker T talked about a rule a person should have as a habit is reading their Bible as much as possible, right? And history, greatest man's never influenced anything that lasted or lasting if they weren't readers of the Bible. This is his belief system. So we know this is what Garvey also took on, right? And it said, basically, you know, a man that read the Bible know the Bible said if a man don't work, he don't eat. So therefore, in that debate, I went to Jeremiah 29:4-7, where it said, "Build ye houses and dwell in them, plant gardens." There go you some, and eat the fruit of them. Take ye wives and beget sons and daughters. Produce other people, right? So you producing a house, you producing food, you producing other people that need to produce houses and produce gardens and this and that. Then it said take wives for your sons, not take wives for your daughters, you know what I'm saying? And not take husbands for your sons. So that's another thing that we need and the Pan-African community needs, because you got people like Irritated Jenny running around with the straight pride, straight African pride, or African straight pride thing. I forget exactly how it go, but there you go. Voila, the Bible tell you that a man shouldn't lay with a man like that, and a woman shouldn't lay with a woman. So we see here that it said, take wives for your sons and give your daughters to husband, that they might bear sons and daughters. So we can have generation on generations. And if you're building on a land that you own and you got agriculture and farming and this and that, we know we're going back old school. This is not the modern day times where that's happening, because people stay in the concrete jungle. They don't stay on land where they can cultivate the land and cultivate the community in the way that they need to be, seeing that, once again, they in these high rises stacked on each other. And it said, seek the peace of the city, where the Lord calls you to go away captive, and pray unto the Lord for the peace thereof, because the peace of the city is your peace. So now this is where most people go into the craziness about the Bible said be a servant and this and that and obey your master and stuff. But it's about authority. Anyone that has authority over you, you should listen to him, and you should such and such and such. But in the democracy, you have the right to choose who has authority over you, who's the mayor of the city, who's on the city council, who's the police chief, and things of that nature, because you in the politics, right? So now, as my brother Reggie came out with it, like I said, we talk about it every now and then. I'm not trying to take credit for stuff, but the Black City plan, right? That everybody can migrate to an area, a black city, and become the mayor, the governor, and this and that. And as Dr. Ben said in the Pan-African book, We the Black Jews, that and some other books too. But if you're not governing nothing, then you don't know how to govern. You don't know how to run a nation if you never ran a nation. So you at least got to have some form of body politics or organization where you leading people and putting people in ministerial roles and offices and stuff. And once you do that, then you'll know how to run something. So this goes back to, once again, different vocations in the body of Christ, but also in the community, because the body of Christ is made up of the community, as I was talking about earlier today, the church and the church building. The people are the church, and as the church go, then they got to have a building. They got to have air conditioning in the building. They got to do different things. The Israel of God just built a big church in Illinois, right? Which is like the main office of the Israel of God. They use black people to do this. They brought the man up from Memphis, this, that, and the other. They use their own people and their label, make sure they get money and stuff. So we can see where using the Bible, as I said, dealing with acts and dealing with everybody having need and want, and everybody selling certain stuff, as we can do now. And I give a shout out to the Knesset of Jesus up in Buffalo. We debated communism, and I know there's communism or socialism, and that's where they get it from in Acts 2 and Acts 4. But at the same time, we can sell all our stuff here. As the parable go, a man find a field with great treasures in it. He sell all he got to go buy that field, because he know it's more valuable than that he had. So we can leave certain areas like the cities and stuff and find a place and migrate there and set up government. And then we can take one city at a time and build like that, and then treat it like we're in foreign countries, and we embargo and different stuff with each other, and start dealing with commerce with each other. Then we can start taking over these instructions and stuff. I keep telling people, in the South it's the same thing as up north. These people leave these factories and stuff to go to Mexico where it's cheap labor. It's factories in the South. It's land in the South. You can drive your car in the South. You don't have a great commute. You know what I'm saying? Most people lose their job because they have to go to work every day and they late, or they can't make it to work. But if your job is around the corner and you could just get on a bike and go there, how many times you going to be late to work? So it's a lot to talk about and deal with. I'm gonna be quiet. Maybe somebody else want to jump in, but
Yeah, out there, Carl. You said a
huh?
whole lot. You said a whole lot, and it was all good. I feel your vibe on that. And keeping on with the topic of Pan-Africanism, and now it appears we kind of trying to see how we applying that to the present moment, right?
Correct.
So what we mean by Pan-African is self-determination. This starts immediately from birth within the family. So the way our structure is now is that when you're born into the community, you're pushed through school. They call it the prison to pipeline system. They're weeding us out. They're throwing us in jail. Your first job is minimum wage at a McDonald's, or this is, I'm talking about average people, and you are ill-equipped with any proper type of skill, because the skill set that you need for your first job is not incorporated where you go to school. One of the things that we used to do during a time of segregation years is simple commodities such as soap. You didn't go down to the market to buy any soap. That was something that's just as common as black women braiding hair. I was growing up, every woman in the neighborhood braid hair. So, if you need that done, you don't have to go to any white folks to get your hair braided or get a haircut. That's something that remains in the black neighborhood only because white folks aren't too interested in taking over that business. Now, they have taken over the supplies, but those same supplies, those are made in the house. Soap is as simple as olive oil, coconut oil, and lye. A sponification of those ingredients creates soap. You can make that in 30 minutes. This is a simple solution to a problem. If you teach your daughter or your son soap making from the time they're 5, when they're 15, they don't need a job at McDonald's. They could just stand on the corner and sell soap to the community that they need it. They need soap. Everybody needs soap. So that's something, whether the market is good or bad, people have to buy. The problem is we have removed an industrial education out of our framework, not by ourselves, but by the design of those who choose to destroy our neighborhoods. So when we look back at the foundation, we do so because they had it better than us in this understanding. Today, you got, like the man mentioned, his cousin or relative who has a hair product company. He has to go out and get an Indian man to represent the face of the company in order to be profitable. Well, I know 4 or 5 people in the black market on food on hair products, and they don't got no Indian that they need to face them off in order to be profitable. It just comes by simply demanding what you want, breaking the stereotype and going back to who you used to be. Well, you can't get this kind of education at these schools today, because by the time they give you anything to really pinpoint you on what you're going to master, you're already at the college level. You've already been weeded out from the losers. And now you're in a position where they tell you that success is to disconnect yourself from where you come from.
Yeah, but even with vocational schools, people go through 12 years of so-called school, but you can get out of high school, go get you a GED, and get you a vocational
You don't
trade.
you don't have to make it through high school to be a master in a vocational trade. You don't need any kind of piece of paper to do vocational skills. You can learn this by simply teaching this to the kids.
Yeah, but I'm just saying in the sense that you get to 9th, 10th grade, you get old enough to go and get this trade, you can drop out of school, go get the trade, get you a GED at the same time. You'll be finished with school, quote unquote, through the GED, which will still allow you to go to college and get an education, but you have a vocational skill where you can make money and even put yourself through school instead of getting all them loans and stuff, so on and so forth. There's many different ways to skin a cat, and that's the problem in the community, that no one is looking at the options that's before us, and vocation takes us back to Booker T. So that's why one goes back to that understanding that we need to build houses, we need to plant gardens, we need to have families and have a legacy to pass on to them, and even a trade to pass on to them, or a family business that we created from that trade.
And that, that's why I said, that's what I was talking about earlier as far as accolades, and then comparing ourselves to the next and what we deem as successful. To say you got a vocational skill, you can cut hair, but does cutting hair, does it make more money than a person who works downtown dealing with epidemics, or a person who works at an engineering firm, So it's like,
more money. It's just like people talk about the drug dealing. For the hours you stay out there and the little bitty money you getting, if you really do the math and stuff, it's not even working out right. But if you got a vocational skill, like you say, cutting hair, and you sitting in the you get your little beauty salon too, where you might be able to wash a little hair of the women and stuff, or do a little styling, you really making your money now. You just ain't messing with the men's hair, and the women's hair, you get even more money, right? So nothing homosexual about it unless you're a homo. But anyway.
Right, I understand what you're saying.
You know what I'm saying? Because you got at a barber shop on a certain holiday, weekend and stuff, you got these heads coming down, $20 a pop. You know what I'm saying? 5 heads, you just made what?
$100, and you're making that like $3,000 for that month, if you look at it that way.
So you get money like that. If you're dealing with air conditioners and things of that nature, and you running around to these different stores and stuff, putting free on and doing stuff. If you're dealing with cars and you can work on these motors and things, the only thing about it now in the car industry, they making it where you got to deal with the computers and stuff. But that's why at the same time you going to school and they putting you on the machines and stuff, and you learning the trade within the vocational school. So you can't lose like that. So if somebody is advocating this and saying Booker T advocated it and it's the greatest thing that we know, then if we try it, maybe we'll get somewhere. But no one is advocating it today, but certain individuals here today that's doing that. And as the brother James said, we could do both. So as I was advocating, and he probably agree or anybody disagree can chime in too, that if you get that vocational skill and you working on the side as well as doing your online college credits and stuff, and once you get enough, you're gonna go to school and stuff, you building your money, you building your credits in school and stuff, and you preparing yourself to take over in this small town some business or whatever, and you building a community now you cultivating, but you gotta love your neighbor and be able to bring them in too. Right.
What I'm saying? I was about to say that. I was about to, not to cut you off, I'm sorry, but to talk about integrity, like to my man James, he graduated Howard. Then you got other people who graduated in certain schools. You got you brought up Reggie, Dr. Reggie, or whatever. The thing is, when you have a certain education, then the thing after you get that education is if you still have the same passion for the community as before you had the education, to say that, to use that education to say, what, I'm going to start my own industry doing what I got this degree in. And these are the people I use to fund it will be regular common people of the community. And we're all going to have a share in it. And then you would take somebody who understand finances, who got a degree in finances, and so on and so forth, and community build. But it goes back to the to integrity and the passion that you had before you even got these skill sets.
Well, that goes back to the theological side of it, because that's what we started out with. When you're dealing with the Bible and certain things, love thy neighbor, what other doctrine pushes this to that degree? Yes, people hate to, love God in a sense, but the love thy neighbor part. How can you love God and hate the man that you see and never seen God at any time? So we see these different intrinsic principles within the doctrine, the teachings and stuff, which builds the character of a man to be able to do the things that he need to do for his fellow man. You know what I'm saying? He that stole no longer steal, that he might work and have something that he might be able to help the next man. These are principles and stuff. Now I'm tying the theological standpoint and the study of God and the study of them laws, statutes, and commandments with the vocational things, right? As well as the intellectual things, because when you deal with the Bible, it gives you the poetry you want. It's written in a certain way. It is a piece of literature. So you get vocabulary, you get everything you need out of the Bible when it comes to the liberal arts. It's science in there, is geography in there, is everything in that book that the liberal arts bring you. So the thing is to have the ability and the mindset where you can tie all these things in together. But once again, I'm not the smartest, or I'm gonna take it to the, I'm not the sharpest tool in the toolbox. But I
Right.
ain't the,
Well,
you know what I'm saying?
let me.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry. Let me say
And
something.
this open mic for y'all that don't know, just say, like the brother said, I want in, and we expect the mic and give it to another brother because he might have a profound thought at that time.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm gonna say this before I have to get off. I'm gonna have to get. I gotta get up in the morning. But you know, I think again, you know, I mean, I know we've kind of focused on the Bible in this particular discussion. Um, uh, for me, you know, again, I think regardless of what your religious belief is, regardless of who your teacher is, or what ancestors you particularly, you know, care to study, or whatever the case is, at the end of the day, as long as you um, are trying to move in the right direction and trying to study. And I think a discussion in a platform like this is good because you get people of various experiences and organizations together to say, look, what are we really going to do at the end of the day? You know, when you're done talking about it, and when you're done, you know, if a brother got a mattress business going on, man, I need a mattress. If somebody got a toothpaste company, I need toothpaste. And if I'm sitting here with my product, you know, so hopefully somebody will come and shop with me. You know, that's the direction that we all need to be going in, regardless of what school of thought that we're in. And I just want to say before I leave, I'm thankful that y'all invited me to discuss this topic with y'all tonight. I definitely look forward. What day is the sister coming on that you talking about? I definitely want to check that out.
Oh, she coming on next Saturday at 7 o'clock.
Next Saturday at 7 o'clock. I will mark my calendar. So
Supposed to be the person on Booker T. So, as far as I know, so if you want to know about Booker T, you want to ask questions about the man history and certain stuff, come
good
check
money.
out the show because she got it.
Good money. I'll definitely check it out because a lot of folks might not know he was actually a Prince Hall Mason. So you know, we always stay connected in the community regardless of what organization we're in. But he was one of our brothers in the Masonic world. So I definitely want to check out what she has to say.
Okay. I want to say this right quick. We back to when you say speaking about books, and we're talking about vocations. You know, like you don't have to go to school to learn how to cut down a tree. You know, and the same thing with taking that tree and turn paper.